We may be the first people in modern history to actually climb up back here. We're gonna be one of the only people in history that have seen what we're about to see. Well, it's day 3 of the expedition. After yesterday's 5.5-hour drive into the remote backcountry of southwest New Mexico, we finally arrived at what is probably the most remote campsite in all of New Mexico. So today, the on-foot portion of the expedition really begins. It looks like we're going to be out here for over a week, up to 8 or 9 days, out in the wilderness, cutting down into some river valleys that are uncharted. They've got no trails on them, it's not developed, it's not maintained, and it's those side canyons that I suspect that we may be able to find Mogollon cliff dwellings, ancient sites. We're also going to be taking the very first photograph ever of the source of the West Fork Gila River during our expedition, and then we're going to be looking for evidence of big cat habitation. I mean, the likelihood of us seeing a big cat is almost zero, but we might be able to see a trail or some scat, document it, give it over to a big cat expert, and who knows, they may be able to differentiate between whether it's a puma or maybe there's an undetected and hiding breeding population of jaguars out here. Maybe it's solo males who are coming up from Mexico. It feels very surreal. My grandfather was an explorer of the Gila back from 1955 to 1964. His whole exploration career, at least the main part of it, was dedicated here in the Gila. And it's kind of surreal to be back. It's a very evocative place. The Gila Cliff Dwelling National Monument.
Well, you don't have to tell YouTube.
I mean, I'm going to end up talking about it on Rogan, though, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm not going to say, hey, it's in this specific canyon, but people will just know we were on the upper West Fork Gila, you know? All right. All right, Rock. All right. So we're here at Snow Lake today. So when we come down this dam, we're gonna have to make an initial river crossing. We may have to make multiple. I'm really not 100% sure. This right here, this Gila Creek, is not where we're turning right. We pass that, we come down the middle fork. We're gonna be walking downhill a little bit, and then we're gonna hit Iron Creek. Just have to make sure we don't miss it for Clayton Creek, but I think we'll be right on. We're gonna hit Iron Creek and we'll come down, and then we'll come to Cooper Canyon. I keep saying Cades or Clayton, but it's Cooper Canyon. And this canyon right here could be our stop point for the day, depending on how fast we move. If we move really fast, and we got a late start today, so we may end up stopping here. But if we move really fast, we'll go up and we'll hit Turkey Feather Ridge and we'll come down and we'll try to get about right there. Now here's where some of these trails converge. Nobody's gonna be out there though. Nobody walks these trails. You gotta walk like 40 miles just to get here. Yeah, so this whole place is pretty treacherous. And I think that this is where some burning happened. But we cross all this without water. And then we'll get water again.
That's the biggest feat of the whole trek, huh?
I guess we're gonna find out. Yeah, so, sound good to everybody? Yep. Questions or anything?
Well, if the wife and I's a fussing, brother, that's alright. Cause me and Adam Warm, we bought a license to fight. So don't you mind your own business. Yeah, mind your own business. Cause if you minded your business, then you wouldn't be minding mine. Oh, the woman on our party line's a nosy thing. She picks up my receiver when she knows it's my ring. Why don't she mind her own business? Oh, mind her own business. Cause if she minded her business, then she wouldn't be minding mine.
I'm actually not too wet, all things considered. Maybe next time we'll find an easier place to cross. Yeah. So right across the river is potentially they were used in ancient times, but they've either been looted or collapsed. Where we're at right now on the Middle Fork, this is a heavily trafficked area. Well, I should say way more heavily trafficked than where we're headed to. And the native Mogollon would have seen hangovers like that, natural cavities in the cliffside, and they would have built them up and walled them out and lived there while farming maize and other crops down here by the riverside. So what we're looking for when we get to the uncharted portion of the West Fork is something like this, but I think there's a good possibility of us finding something even larger. The main leg of the expedition right now is trying to navigate the guys correctly down the Middle Fork and knowing when to turn right onto Iron Creek, taking us west to a canyon that's going to take us over Turkey Feather Ridge and then down into the West Fork Gila. It's beautiful out here, but massive. I mean, looking at it on Google Earth or satellite imagery or a map doesn't at all convey how absolutely enormous the landscape actually is and how easy it really could be to get lost out here. Luckily, it's hard to get lost right next to a river, but you can easily mistake one creek for another and end up making the wrong turn, and all of a sudden you've lost 1 or 2 days of the expedition. So right now the navigation is really, really important until we reach the West Fork. So we are a few hours in, and we're not quite moving as fast as we anticipated we would, but that's to be expected. You don't really know the terrain until you're in it, and the river crossings take a pretty tremendous amount of time. So today is definitely the longest day of the expedition and the latest start that we'll have. So once we get this out of the way, it's mostly all downhill. And we could take these trails, but they don't have water sources, and also we're not here to do hiking. This right here is an uncharted, Iron Creek is an uncharted water source with a lot of southeast facing. So this is south here. Southeast facing ridges, which is exactly what the Mogollon would have been looking for. They're looking for ridges that are facing towards the southeast with these natural cavities in the rock side and like the volcanic rock side to build their dwellings in. So our first mission is this uncharted creek here, and then when we get to this canyon here, we go over the top, and then eventually further down we go down into the West Fork. So we'll get a little bit into Iron Creek today, but if we're bushwhacking it, we're just gonna have to find a place to camp in a couple hours. And then tomorrow we'll have an extra, almost 3 hours. It probably took us 3 hours to get out today. So tomorrow, bright and early, we'll be going. Yeah. All right, boys, let's do it. So we just bushwhacked our way up to this pink volcanic rock. It looks exactly like something that you would see at the Gila Cliff Dwelling National Monument. And I thought maybe for a second that this would actually be a cliff dwelling behind me, but it's not a cliff dwelling, and as far as I can tell, there's no cliff dwelling art or painting on it. Although if there were, it could have easily eroded. It's flat enough that it could be a canvas for cliff dwelling art, but if there was any, it's eroded away or it's so faint I haven't made it out yet. But it's things like this that are facing towards that winter sunrise that make this place seem so evocative and so inviting for the Mogollon people to build something here, as they want the winter sun, but they want to avoid the summer sun. So before we walk down from here, I told the guys, come stand over here and just stare at this rock wall, because I felt like almost certainly there would be something here, or at one point there was. And Brady looks over to the left and sees that right there. It's hard to make out, but that's a stick figure with something on the adjoining wall. And because it's in the corner like that, it's protected, so it doesn't erode away. But you can imagine how this entire rock face was covered with ancient art at one point in time. All right, let's keep going. So on day 3, we made it about 6 miles into the wilderness. We came down Gila Creek, met the Middle Fork, met Iron Creek, and I would guess we're probably about halfway down Iron Creek until we hit Cooper's Canyon, which is going to take us over Turkey Feather Mountain down into the West Fork Gila. Tell you, it's beautiful out here. The weather is perfect. I couldn't have planned this timing any better. The spring is just beginning. Here in a few days, we're going to get some 80-degree days, and that's probably when we're going to see wildlife. But it's been absolutely desolate. The only wildlife that we have seen this entire time was we heard a couple packs of coyotes last night, and then when we were driving in on this very precarious pass called Loco Mountain Pass, we actually saw a gray wolf. So I don't know if that's a good omen or not, but the very first animal we saw in the expedition was a gray wolf. But hopefully we'll see some signs of lions while we're here. Who knows, maybe a jaguar. And the primary goal is to find archaeological sites, of which just out here, up on these mountain ridges here, there are these big white volcanic rock faces that the people who are farming in these fertile valleys down here, you see these fertile valleys, these people are coming down here and they're farming and then going back up and spending their time up by the cliff sides and doing rock art. Really, really interesting, and that's sort of what we're here to survey for. But actually penetrating into the wilderness areas of the Gila is much more time consuming with all of the river crossings that we have to take. I anticipated it to be time consuming, but it's very time consuming. We're running at about 75% the speed that I anticipated that we would on the low end, which is good because we planned for this to be a very long expedition and we brought a lot of extra food. It's been a successful day so far. Tomorrow we got a long way to cover, probably more ground than we covered today. So I thought today was going to be the hardest day, but I think it might be tomorrow. But after that, it's not smooth sailing, but we don't have to go as far every day. Essentially what we're doing is climbing up into the canyon slots, surveying for archaeological sites and animal remains, which will be very time consuming, but we won't have to do it with 40 to 50 pound packs on. It's exciting to be out here on my very first real traditional unsupported extended expedition with a good group of guys here that are setting up camp. I'll show you. So setting up camp, primitive camping. We thought about cowboy camping, but we thought it might be too cold, and you know, I don't really want to be laying out in the wilderness and have a mountain lion come like lick my face. It'd be a cool experience, but I think it might be more than just a lick. So got the boys back here setting up camp, and we haven't ate anything today, so we're having 2 servings of rations tonight. I think I'm having beef stew and chicken fajita bowl, which is going to be delicious, and tons of water. I'm trying to stay on the guys about water and electrolytes. All right, so it's the morning of day 4, I believe. We got the boys ready, about to head out. We got about 4 miles down Iron Creek, headed towards the west, looking up along the cliffside for ruins, pictographs, cave art, things like that. But really the main goal is to get to this canyon that's going to take us over this huge ridge, and then we come down into the upper West Fork Valley. And it's going to be a long, full day, and I told the guys, you know, don't worry about making it to our next camp, which I'm calling Headwater Camp, because whether we get there with the sun up or the sun down, we're going to get there. So that means if we're hiking at night, we're hiking at night. And then tomorrow we wake up, and then it'll have taken 5 days of modern transportation and walking to get to the remote place that we're actually exploring. So it's crazy, but it's really a blast. I mean, being out here is amazing. And once the sun goes down and you eat, you got nothing else to do but catch up on your sleep. So we're all on 9 to 11 hours of rest and feeling pretty good and ready to go. I feel better this morning than I did when we started yesterday with these big heavy packs. So we're gonna get after it and get this expedition on the roll. So right now we're in this really, really tight canyon, trying to figure out how to get the boys through here without getting their feet wet. You can see behind me, it gets really tight and you've either got to climb up the rocks like where he's at, or we got to go through the water. So I'm giving the guys the option to boulder or take off their boots and put on water boots. I think mine will be okay, but we are definitely out here in the uncharted region of the Gila. I haven't seen one shoe track out here at all.
Yeah, I'm really a herbal vendor. Yeah, I'm kind of an old timey.
Some of the challenges of getting through these uncharted regions that have no trails. When you get here, it's obvious why there are no trails. It's just these jagged, very rigid, tight, narrow valleys here. These canyons that we either have to go through where the water could be up to our chest, or climbing up the side of them and trying to go over it and back down. We're seeing scat all over the place, and the only thing that I can think that could actually run around in this terrain out here, maybe a bear, but more likely a lion. So I think that's some of the scat that we're seeing. I got it documented. I'm gonna ask some biologists, but pretty sure we're seeing some lion habitation out here. But where we're at is where the burned part of the Gila is ending, and we're getting into areas of the forest where we have no more ash layers. So I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more wildlife. We're hearing more birds habituating in the trees. But I think we got several more hours of going down these canyons. So right now I'm brushing all this soft dirt off so you'll have solid steps to go down.
I'm just kidding.
All right. Hey, that's good. That's good enough. So we decided to get out of those narrow valleys and just climb up the sheer face of this mountain. And then maybe we can see a little bit further. So I'm about to look over right now. Got a long way to go, boys. Well, we learned a lesson to trust the river. We got over there, mountainside is too steep, so we gotta go back down. We know what terrain the river holds, and it's hell. And you don't know what the mountains hold. They could have cliffs before you see them. It's just impossible to get over. So back down to the river we go. So I had no expectation of actually finding pit houses. And then we're walking by and I look to my left, I see this guy right here and I think, is that a house mound? And I turn to Nick, who's been with me in Mexico, where you can see a lot of these house mounds that the natives built. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, and that's a pit house. Sure enough, we found an ancient village right here. in one of the most remote corners of the Gila wilderness. You can see right there is a pit home. Right there is a house mound. Right there is a house mound. Look over here. So these are house mounds. It's so obvious to make it out. This is 100% man-made. You can see all these small stones. They're all brought here and they're all quarried and brought here. These large stones have rolled down from the mountain up there. The natives weren't using those in their construction as far as we know. But right here in this perfect little valley, it's perfectly protected by the absolute hell that we've gone through, sits these little pit house villages. If you can see right here, this is rectangular, and there's a tree growing out of the center of it. This is a huge room right here. It even looks like it's built up off of the ground right here. They're creating terracing here to protect it all from flooding. Nick, did you expect we'd find pit houses?
No. Hell no.
Okay, so we're way out here in these unvisited areas of the Gila. And I walked by this and I noticed these little mounds right here and then this pit. Now, ignore the large boulders that are sitting around here. These have all rolled down from the top. But all the little rocks, all that mortar, I'm almost certain that those were brought here by the Mogollon people and stacked into pit houses. Like this right here is a house mound. And you can see how it's linear here, and it curves around this way. And then that one's its own mound with the separation in here. And then there are other pits over there. This was a little village. Probably a 1,000 or more years ago, they would build these pit houses and they lived almost inside the ground. And clearly they had some kind of mound built up. Maybe it was for cooking, but they'd have these pit houses that they sleep down inside of to regulate the temperature, and then they can burn a fire inside the pit house to give themselves warmth, and it would have had a roof over the top. You can imagine this right here is enough for several people to sleep inside of, and there'd be a roof over the top, and they could heat it up with fire. But being inside the ground, and it's almost definitely deeper than this. This is filled in over the course of 1,000 years. But this was a pit home. This entire thing is a little village. And it makes perfect sense. And it's perfectly defended because everything that we've gone through, no ancient person is walking through absolute hell to get out here. So they're perfectly defended by those narrow cliffs. And I guess we're gonna see what's up here. But dude, this is amazing. I did not think that we would see pit houses. We found something. I'd love to stay around here all day and poke around. And I can almost guarantee that further up there, we'd find something, but we're burning daylight and we're trying to get to our camp. I don't think we're gonna make it. We're running at about 50 or 75% of the speed that I anticipated we would on the slow end. This terrain has to be respected and feared. There were a lot of moments there where something could have easily gone wrong. hanging off of 50-foot ledges, shimmying over waterfalls. All right, let's make it to camp. So that was, without a doubt, probably the hardest thing any of us have ever done. Crossing that terrain was unbelievable. Way more rugged than it appears on Google Earth and satellite imagery. And the mountains are so much taller than they seem on satellite imagery. But we made it through I don't know how many miles of the roughest terrain I've ever seen. Finally made it to a good campsite that's away from potentially falling trees and boulders. We had boulders tumbling down the sides of the mountains all day long, all day. But we found a good spot that's cleared of trees, and we're going right up this mountain in front of me tomorrow morning, crossing the entire mountain range to get down into the next valley. It's tough, but it wouldn't be an expedition then, would it?
Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying reliving this Gila expedition as much as I am, but I want to take a moment to say thank you to our channel sponsors. None of these adventures would be possible without them, and in today's video, I want to thank American Financing for sponsoring us. And I want to ask you, have you taken a look at your credit card statement lately? You're working 40, 50 hours a week just to be able to afford groceries and gas, things you used to be able to afford, and the banks are charging you a 20% interest just for the privilege. Think about that. Over 20%. It's designed to keep you underwater. American Financing is doing something the big banks hate. They're actually helping people. They have mortgage rates in the 5s, and they're showing homeowners how to take their hard-earned equity to wipe out that high-interest debt. The average savings are $800 a month. It takes 10 minutes to talk to a salary-based mortgage consultant. No upfront fees, no obligation to see how much you can save. And if you start today, you could delay 2 mortgage payments. That's immediate cash in your pocket when you need it the most. Give American Financing a call. America's home for home loans. Dial 866-889-5022. That's 866-889-5022 or americanfinancing.net/Luke. Thank you to American Financing for sponsoring this video. Now back to the show.
All right, well, we got the boys loaded and packed up this morning, and we are on, I don't even know, what is this, day 5 of the expedition?
5 of the expedition,
Yeah.
day 3 of hiking.
Yeah, day 3 actually out here in the field. And it's gonna be a full day of just hiking to our next camp, where tomorrow we put in to survey the uncharted regions of the Gila. So it's gonna be a long day. One of the things we're gonna be looking for today, since we're walking along a dry creek bed out in this backcountry that got destroyed by flooding several years ago, and there's only little streams going through it, is stone tools and arrowheads. They're gonna be our most likely chance to be able to see ancient artifacts during the expedition.
Make it. My heart's getting going pretty good, but as long as we stop like.
Okay, so we just finished this long stretch without an ounce of water. We've gone, I don't know, a couple miles without an ounce of water. Up the mountain, down over it, and I come down and I see an area of the forest here that doesn't get any sunlight at all, and so there's still some frozen water here. And so I reach down my hand and get this ice and put this ice like in my collar and on my lower part of my face. And then the boys show this turd next to it that looks like a giant bear turd. And then I realized, oh, this is where the bear pissed, and it froze, and I just wiped it all over my face and neck. So hopefully if that doesn't kill me of some kind of disease, then it'll keep the bears away, because we'll think that we're one of the bears. So we just came over this long pass over the mountains, and as we're coming down, we see this trail, and clearly it's being used by some crazy through hikers. But we were talking and we were thinking that it's very possible that these trails are just the original Mogollon trails from over 1,000 years ago that all take the path of least resistance. And then when the Forest Service comes through, they also find these same places cleared out. I mean, Native Americans all over the Americas were clearing out huge highways. You had highways on the ground crossing the Mississippian world through the woodlands. You had highways, we have highways up in the more arid areas of the Southwest connecting Chaco Canyon to other sites. So it only makes sense that they would also have highways and roads running through the Mogollon realm. I have no doubt that at least some of these trails that are out here are just ancient roads that are the path of least resistance between one settlement and another. So we're walking down this ravine. Brady looks to the right. Sure enough, it looks like something is man-made here. But it catches me off guard because it doesn't look like anything I've seen from the Mogollon or the Cliff Dwellers, not quite. If we were in the Inca realm, this looks very Inca. You see thousands and thousands of terraces like this in the Inca realm. And we're here in this deep ravine where there must be rocks tumbling down all the time. So it doesn't strike me as a home. I don't know what it is. It could only be a terrace. Never seen anything like this in the Cliff Dweller realm. Very cool. All right, let's get this one marked. Continue on. Pretty steep right here, Joe.
Are you gonna go through to the Susbcribe or something like that, or?
No, so we're so I'm an anthropologist, specialized in Native American world.
Oh, cool.
And there's some slot canyons. I've been in that upper half of the West Fork where there's kind of a trail, but not really a trail. And it's where all the trails go around that kind of unvisited part.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some slot canyons up there that have the right orientation for the winter sunrise. And I suspect if there are large cliff dwellings around here that aren't well known or maybe aren't known at all,
that's where they'd be.
about where the
Yeah.
Cool.
You just
So
find
you're
a
gonna go
bunch
up that way then?
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we were walking through here and we were like, y'all smell fire?
Fire? Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So where'd you guys come from?
We came from the cliff dwellings. Over
Oh,
there, Woody's
you
Corral.
hiked all the way up from the cliff dwellings.
Yeah.
Well, not
Well, we've
one
had-
day.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not that far.
Yeah.
But we've taken our time doing it, day hiking out of camp a little bit.
How many days have y'all been out now?
I don't know, 10 or 11.
10, yeah.
Wow.
Something like that.
and we'll do another
That
5
is
or
cool.
6. Yeah. Well, they allow it.
They
Yeah, I was
carry
gonna say.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
it's
incredible.
just
We've been talking about this whole time,
Yeah,
man.
I
We
was
had
like,
mules.
We
Yeah.
wish we had
Yeah.
a mule.
they're super cool because you can highline them and leave them in camp, and you can head out.
Brady.
You know, and they just hang out all day.
Isn't that funny how when we started saying, "Hey," they all walked up to see what it was.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they're very
Well,
protective.
and it was cute. You got one of the snorts.
Yeah.
Oh, did we?
Yeah,
They do like a little bear.
They're like,
growl.
"What's that?"
I heard that. I was wondering
Or
what
they
that
kinda
was.
do like,
Yeah, they do it if there's any
Yeah.
predators or anything around. They,
Wow.
they
They
make a
huff.
lot of noise.
What an
Yeah.
incredible creature.
"This one's Albert."
Albert.
Hello, Albert. He's like, hello, guy.
He's our baby.
They're
Yeah.
pets. They're big, giant
They're just
dogs.
like giant dogs. It's well put. That's exactly what they are.
Okay, so I gotta get a mule when I go back to New
we had
Zealand.
So they're
think you
donkeys.
do.
They're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
mules.
Where are you from?
Newfoundland.
No kidding.
You were Newfoundland?
Right on.
Yeah, I'm far from home.
You sure are.
Yeah, far from
Wow.
home. Came all the way for this.
Did you?
Yeah,
All
just for
right.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about 28 hours to get here because there was a bunch of
yeah?
snowstorms on the eastern
Oh,
coast.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was like getting chased by the snow. So
Yeah.
a few
So he'll
delays,
be 3 in
few
May.
few
He's our
cancel
baby.
flights.
Oh my goodness.
And he's actually the black one, the chocolate one. Is
Have you been here
her baby.
before?
No, never.
You guys have
I,
4 of them.
First time I was in the States
Wow.
was actually I visited Luke in San Antonio.
I did not
First
expect
time
that
I
we
was
would
ever
run
in the
into
States.
anybody out here.
Oh yeah. You're the
How
first-
often do you run into
That was
people?
second.
Well, we're not from here, so this is our first trip to the Gila, but no, I haven't seen anybody.
And you brought the donkeys with you?
We've come
From
a
where?
long way, and there's no
Idaho.
one coming behind.
No way.
No, we
Yeah.
haven't seen anybody either.
Not
We
with
saw-
packs.
These guys are from Idaho. They brought the
Wow.
donkeys
They are.
with them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
We saw a hiker the second day,
Yeah, the second day.
but we
And he
weren't
was
very
doing
far
like a
from the
day
trailhead, so he caught us. But then, other than that, we'd seen nobody.
Man, that is
Yeah, the last
so
thing we
crazy.
expected to find out here were other people.
No kidding. Yeah, yeah. We didn't expect anybody either. But
Yeah, well, I'm
good to
looking
see
through
you
my
guys.
binocular and I'm like, oh man, I hope there's not like a forest fire or something.
Yeah.
And I see this haze, and then I see a donkey. I'm like, oh well,
that's
those
not
are
fire.
either loose donkeys or those are pets.
Yeah, they're pets.
They were loose.
They'd be hard to get rid of.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how much further down is the West Fork from here?
Right there.
Oh, it's right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right there.
Awesome. How close is water from here? You guys
It's
must
right
be
there.
right next to it.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a nice little spring.
Yeah.
I probably
Following
wouldn't
it.
drink just from
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but
It's clearer than
It's
the
cl-
West Fork.
yeah, the West
Fork's
Fork's
pretty salty.
Really?
Yeah.
yeah.
So you might want to fill here if you're going down there to camp or something.
And there's a nice flat like right there, like around this little knob.
And there's
If
all
you
kinds
guys
of
are ready
stuff
to camp.
upstream as well.
Golly,
You haven't looked up there yet. But
that is crazy.
Yeah.
All
pretty
right.
cool.
Well, hey, great to meet.
Great
Ken,
to
you
meet
said?
you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke, good to meet
Patty.
you. Patty, great to meet you.
nice to
Patty.
meet you.
Nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you guys.
So when are you
Where
gonna
the rest
do
of you
stuff?
from?
Like how
Texas.
do you,
Texas.
how would we follow
Which
you?
part?
Like to see like what you do.
About 2
What's my
hours
name?
west
Luke
of Dallas,
Caverns.
Wichita Falls.
Caverns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
C-A-V-E-R-N.
So we drove
ma'am. Yeah.
into Albuquerque, picked all of them up from the airport, and then we drove out in the middle of nowhere. We were parked at Dripping Vat campground.
Oh, yeah.
For
What
the,
pass did we take to get there? It was gnarly.
Was it really?
it went from a trail to
We've been coming through.
nobody's been here in forever. I don't know
Gila.
how people are getting to that campsite. The only other road going out there is closed in the winter.
Is
Yeah.
that right?
So
I
we
was
took this-
curious about that.
So we
because
took a trail
it
out
looked
there.
Trail, yeah.
pretty rugged.
Yeah, in his
You don't have a
in his
four-wheel drive.
F-250,
No
it was
trailer,
wild.
You can't bring no trailer. It's
No
full
go.
drive country.
Yeah.
How many trees did we move? Like 4 or 5?
It's almost.
Huh.
Yeah, we had
it's
to move
close
trees
to
up the
ATV
road.
country. I mean, yeah,
Really?
Yeah, there were some trails. I was like, I'd see some tire tracks. I'm like, that wasn't enough. That's so narrow. That was either a small ATV or a 4-wheeler.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's so well labeled. You know, it just looks like
When you get out there far enough, the
That's
label
smart.
stops.
Okay.
I just mean on the map.
I'm only Canadian.
Oh, he's from LA.
Yeah.
I am from another planet, I guess, right?
I'm from another planet.
So he's done lots of backpacking, and we were like, when we first started, we were like, hey, where's this rank on the craziest things you've done? He's like, oh yeah, it's top 3. And then after day 2, we crossed through Iron Creek, which is there's no trail at all, and I
Yeah.
mean we're kind of sidewinding along cliffs, shimmying along cliffs with like a 50-foot drop with waterfalls underneath us. And by the end of that, he goes, okay, I take it back. This is the craziest
This
thing
is
I've
number
ever
one now.
Yeah, this is number one now.
yeah.
Well, that's fun. Iron Cliff, huh?
Yeah, we came down some pretty steep stuff with them last night, just before dark.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Had to move some logs.
Where
and-
at? Where are you coming
Right
down?
back here.
Okay.
Right back
Yeah.
on those switchbacks coming down from Jackass Park.
It's like a mile and a half downriver.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
there's Cub Creek.
Appropriately enough, Jackass Park.
Yeah.
How long is the walk from here to Cub Creek?
It's only an hour or a mile and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
And
really.
there's a nice flat there.
There's a really
Yeah,
nice
we
camp
camped
there.
there
We
last
camped there last
You think
night.
we got time to make it there?
Oh, heck
by
yeah.
sunlight?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
Sundown?
Well,
Yeah.
Sundown?
I don't know. Yeah.
We'll be close though.
Oh,
Well,
gosh.
think-
It's only
They
4
think we can make it
Oh,
to
yeah.
Cub Creek.
But Cub Creek is if you're going upriver.
No, we're going down. Like we're from here. We're going down.
Okay.
Well, that'll be perfect for you.
then yeah, that's a great place to
Yeah.
go.
You'll still have a good
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
We
thinking
left
about leaving
orange
our
peels
bags
in the
there
car, I
and
think.
doing like some light
Oh,
later
yeah.
camping through the hill.
Yeah.
Or through you got a predator behind you.
That'd be a fantastic place to cache your stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Without a doubt.
That's our plan.
Yeah. We're going to go out of here and go up
This
on
one.
top over at
Switch
Lily
back.
Park and that business. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to get a move on.
We'll see you guys.
Yeah.
Great running
Yeah.
into you.
Yeah. Nice meeting you.
You guys.
Good luck
Yeah.
with your
Well,
adventure.
we finally made it to the West Fork, and it is as majestic and uncharted as I hoped it would be. Some service trails here, but barely really any glimpse of them. This place is so unvisited. It's just beautiful out here. Oh, look at this. Here's some more of these stones that look like terraces. These are definitely purposely stacked. The question is whether or not this was stacked by Forest Service to protect from erosion, to protect the trail beneath, or if those are Mogollon for some reason. I told the boys we'd stop at a place that I had labeled called Headwater Camp, but that other group was out there camping with their donkeys basically right by it. And I thought, well, would have been cool to camp with those guys, but I didn't want to intrude. So we moved on, and we're going to our second site on the West Fork that I had planned. So it's an extra mile and a half. I hope they don't hate me. But that one's called Cub Creek Camp. And then from there, we descend down into the uncharted portions of the upper West Fork. So it's taken however many days to get here now. It's amazing. It gives you a whole new perspective on what frontier life was like, what the world of the Native Americans was like, how long it took to traverse the landscape, to travel from one place to the other. Their world was absolutely massive. Even though we live in the same place as them, on the same continents, their world was much, much bigger. You know, I flew from North Carolina to Albuquerque in just a few hours, right? That would be like crossing worlds for them. Really makes you respect the wilderness and the size of continents. All right, so last night got the boys to a good camp spot, and this morning we are headed into the uncharted upper West Fork, where I at least suspect is the most likely place we may be able to find uncharted cliff dwellings. And as of just right now, we just got off the trail, and there won't be any more trail for the rest of the day. So there's a couple canyon slots that I've identified that have the right orientation towards that winter sunrise that the Mogollon and all cliff dwellers would have liked. And by building something that aligns to the winter sunrise, you also avoid the hot summer afternoons just inherently. And if you kind of know that principle, you should be able to dial in and somehow calculate where cliff dwellings could be. Now that said, we don't really know how expansive the Mogollon world was into the Gila wilderness because expeditions like this haven't been done. So we're either going to prove that the Mogollon world was bigger than it seems, or we're going to prove that they were a pretty concentrated, small, isolated civilization right in the center of the Gila, where all three of those main forks converge on each other. So we made it down to the camp that I had thought we'd come to. So right here behind me is Cubs Creek. Up this way is the upper part of the West Fork Gila River. It goes all the way to the headwaters. Now typically, well actually always, the trails that come through here come along Cubs Creek, they cut through this campsite, and then they continue upriver But what nobody ever goes down is this right here. This is the uncharted and unvisited region of the West Fork Gila. It's a long, long, long expanse of wilderness, and it's where they say that all the wildlife was pushed to. There may be some remnants of service trails in there, but there's no trails if you find them, if you look on maps, if you get West Fork Gila maps or state park maps or whatever, there's nothing this way forward. So about to head into the great unknown finally after what, like 5 days to get here? All right, boys, well, we traveled a long ass way to be here.
You're good. You're good.
If there is anywhere in the Gila wilderness where we're most likely to find a set of uncharted or unknown and significant cliff dwellings, it's going to be just beyond this bend right here. And even if we don't find anything over the next couple days, we still slayed the fucking dragon, and we know for sure what's up there. And that gives us a much better sense of really how big or how isolated the Mogollon world was. So as for now, there's a big question mark just over that ridge, and at the end of today and tomorrow, we're gonna know for sure what's left on the West Fork River, you know, the heart of the Mogollon world.
Did you hear what that guy said yesterday when you told him where we were going? And I heard him say, he said, if they're there, that's where they'll be.
Really?
And I don't know how much. Yeah, he did say that. You said where we're going, and he said, and then you said, I think that there's a possibility that there will be cliff dwellings there. And you described that area on the West Fork, and he said, yeah, if they're here, that's where they'll be. But I don't know how much research he's done, but maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, he's bringing all his donkeys and everything in here. Maybe he knows what he's doing. Who knows?
Yeah, well, of anywhere in the Gila wilderness, if we're looking for cliff dwellings, anywhere other than this uncharted upper portion of the West Fork is really just throwing darts in the dark. Like this is a concentrated, well thought out, well planned and hypothesized expedition. So we're giving ourselves the highest likelihood to find something.
My body definitely has no clue what day it is. It does not feel like a Saturday.
All right, so just beyond this ridge over there is the place that I've been waiting months to come see. It looks like the right kind of elevation. It doesn't look too steep. I'm not getting my hopes up, but it's gonna be pretty cool just to be over there and actually see it for the first time. Alright, so as we're walking by, there's these two huge rock faces. You can't see them over this, but this looks like what I've seen in the southwestern world, where the natives may have seen this rock face leading up as like a stairway to something. And looking on satellite imagery, just beyond this, there's what looks like to be just the perfect location for a cliff dwelling. So my imagination tells me that if we're going to find a cliff dwelling up in the upper river valley of the West Fork, It's probably going to be in some obscure place, and it's going to be some kind of sacred site. So it may not always be obvious right off the river, but this may lead to it. So let's give it a shot. So we just came up what looked like a little path, like a stairwell. And if my experience and intuition serves me correct, Native Americans are very curious people, always looking for the most primordial locations that they can find. I can't find anything or think of anything that we've seen that looks more ancient than this. This looks like a sacred place. So we're back here in what seems like some kind of inner sanctum. Circular room. Looks like this would have almost certainly been discovered by the Mogollon and used for some reason. Goal now is to take a really thorough look around here and try to find any kind of evidence of habitation or use of any kind. Maybe this was a migratory spot, some kind of mecca, some ritualistic place high, much further up on the mountain or much further up in the river valley. Maybe we'll find something here if we look close enough. So taking a look around this little sanctum, this right here is very obviously a stairwell, almost a path going up and out of here. And from satellite imagery, we can see that there's more over there. There's that little nook there. I'm going to check that out, see if there's anything in it. But if we find one artifact, we found an ancient site. Look at that, these notches in the rock wall. Oh, this had to have been used. And then I can tell that from here, there's a path that goes up there. So we're gonna have to get a good look around this place. If we can find one artifact sitting on the surface, we'll know for certain that this was a place of significance to the Mogollon. All right, so I'm gonna put the camera down and we're gonna do some work. Well, I feel very strongly about the fact that this site had to have been used by the Mogollon people. I mean, if I discovered it in 5 days of exploring the Gila, it's basically impossible that they didn't know it and use it. But finding the evidence laying somewhere on the surface is the real challenge, because flooding just washes everything away, not to mention forest fires. So we're gonna put a pin in this one, come back and survey it with the guys tomorrow. And for now, we're headed further down the river valley. Well, unfortunately, Site 3, if it ever was something, it isn't anymore. Sucks that you can't tell from satellite when you're looking at this. It's just completely destroyed. All of those rocks have fallen in. Well, this is as far as the expedition goes. I don't even, like 5 or 6 full days of walking to get here, I think. But tomorrow we have a survey at Canyon Slot 2, and then we're gonna go up into Canyon Slot 1. So we still have one more site left on the expedition that we haven't been to. So now it's about 3:40, and I gotta get the boys back to camp. It's probably gonna take us, I don't know, close to sunset. So that's disappointing, but at least we came out and slayed the dragon. Oh, man. Tell you what, this long trek back, you know, expeditioning is a very romantic thing, but very few people could do all the things we've done in just half of the expedition so far. The planning, the cost, the risk, the endurance of what it takes to get out here. You know, walking through the wilderness every day with no trails. You know, in severe calorie deficits. Even I get a little wobbly out here. Okay, so we are stopping off here at Canyon 1, right behind me. They're actually waterfalls, and I have a suspicion that if the Mogollon are like any other Native American tribe, then they're giving offerings at sources of water. Now, sometimes that means at their own peril climbing up these waterfalls to leave offerings at the top. This waterfall in Canyon 1 is still frozen from the winter, so it's impossible to climb up unless we find some other huge way around. So it's the morning of day 7 or something like that. We're all pretty worn out and hurting. The mileage that we've covered every day is absolutely ridiculous. I think we've at least walked 7 to 10 miles every day out here. But today we're going packs off. We're descending back down into that upper uncharted region of the upper West Fork River. And we're going back to Canyon Slot 2, which seemed to be the most promising one that we found. Canyon Slot 1 was inaccessible. And as far as I can tell, I don't think that the Mogollon were even able to get up the waterfall to get to the other side. From what I could tell, there was nothing, and there was not really a way to get up it, at least not at this time of the year, because the waterfall was still frozen and it was so tall. That said, the ancient people did build ladders out of wood. So I don't know, maybe if we got over that side, we'd find something. But for the sake of conserving our food, and we're already going to have to, it took us 3 days to get in here, and we're actually going to have to pack it out 2 days starting tomorrow. So today we're doing a survey at Canyon Slot 2, which was the most promising one. That's where I think that the water rituals and offerings were probably taking place during the drought seasons. And so we just need to, I'm 99.9% certain that it's an ancient offering cache site. Nick, who's traveled with me all over the Native American world, he felt exactly the same way. And even he doesn't study Native Americans every day like I do. That's just how obvious it is that it's clearly an important place. But we need to find at least one artifact to go from 99.9% certain to 100% certain. So hopefully we find that today. Finding archaeological remains is obviously, I mean, it's near impossible, but we're gonna have 10 eyes searching today, and hopefully we'll come up with something. So, yep. But it's been a successful expedition so far. We found a pit house village. We found a cliffside with a what used to be a panel that must have been covered with ancient art, but now only a stick figure, and something next to the stick figure survives. I'll have to analyze the photos later on. and then I've been looking this whole expedition for tracks of any kind. I haven't even seen a bear track. So the likelihood of us seeing anything, mountain lions or jaguars, unfortunately, very, very low. The fires that were here years ago penetrated deep from where we began all the way up at Snow Lake, all the way down to the West Fork where we're in now. This is much healthier, but you can see behind me all this burn debris, and it just pushed all these animals out of here. So if there are jaguars breeding, or I mean, even a solo male jaguar somewhere in the Gila wilderness, he's not here. He's probably much further south. So, yep. Well, anyways, we got our final survey day, and I'm gonna bring you guys along with me. So we've come down the West Fork again, and right here in front of me is what I identified as Canyon Slot 1. And I'll show you again why. Maybe it was accessed by the Mogollon people, but I don't have the ability to get up there right now. Not in this time of the year. Maybe in the summer when the way up isn't frozen with ice. But it's this, you know, you can see that this is kind of a cathedral where they would see the water flowing out of the mountain. And they would have revered this as a place where, I don't want to say the water gods, but maybe the spiritual essence of the water came out of the earth, right? We like to oversimplify things into being gods as Europeans because our identity kind of descends from Greco-Roman civilization. But Native Americans saw things as like an essence, if that makes sense. Now, up here is very, very steep climbing up. And I think Native Americans could have accessed it, but during this time of the year, it's just too slick for me to get up there. And we would have to climb up a sheer mountainside or penetrate from the other side of the mountain to be able to get over this. So we're gonna have to mark this one off. Maybe on an expedition where it's warmer, I can come back and explore up there. But for now, we have to spend our time surveying Canyon 2, which I think in general has a more evocative feel to it. It looks like a stairway leading up into these multiple atriums where the water has eroded this solid slate rock. And it's like atrium after atrium after atrium, or cathedrals. And then you get to that back last room where it all opens up. And it just looks like the place that the water gods, the essence of water itself, would have emerged from the mountain. And if I know anything about Native Americans, when the drought season came, they would go to where they knew that the source of the water was coming from, and they would leave offerings. And the Mogollon people were a lot like the Mesoamericans. In fact, of all North American tribes, or nations, I should say, they are suspected to be perhaps the most connected to Mesoamerica. We have pottery that shows beheading scenes, and they also ritually deactivate their pots when they give offerings in the same way that the Maya did, all the way down in Belize that I just saw 3 or 4 weeks ago. down in Central America. I'm underground in these big cathedrals where all these pots that haven't been washed away and all these offerings that haven't been washed away like they have here still exist and still sit underneath the ground. Problem is here, everything gets eroded and destroyed, especially over the last 1,000 or more years with these flash floods. So actually finding ancient artifacts can be difficult. So we're passing through Canyon Slot 1 and headed back to Canyon 2 to do a survey. And then tomorrow we head home. I'm gonna try not to keep these guys out here for 3 more days. It took 3 days to pack in. I'm gonna see if I can't take us up and over one mountain one day and then one mountain the next day to get home. All right, so got the guys up to Canyon Slot 2, and we're gonna perform a little ground survey, just looking for any artifacts that have survived, you know, the multiple devastations of the Gila wilderness over the last 1,000 or more years. If there's a pottery shard, if there's a knife, if there's a spear point, if there's anything that's here that can be found, it will 100% without a doubt prove that this is an archaeological site. If we don't find it, I'm still like 99.9% sure of what a site like this would have been used for by Native American people. It's just obvious. And if you understand the principles of the Native American world, when you see this yourself, it becomes obvious to you as well, especially because it's along the main river, the heart and soul, the central principal river of the Mogollon world. So finding something like this there, if we found this in just a few days of exploring the area, it's basically impossible that the Mogollon didn't find it and then didn't revere it and use it. So, but to go from 99.99% sure to 100% sure, we got to find something today. So let's get started. All right, so we climbed all the way up the waterway. I'm taking the men into this last atrium, almost like a cathedral, and I think you'll see why I think it's possible that the natives, when they're trying to leave offerings to appease the gods in times of drought, they would have found this place as possibly where the spirit of the water or the gods of the water, whatever it is, where they lived and where they came from. And it looks exactly like the kind of place that they'd be leaving offerings at. Does that not look like where the gods of the water would come from? I think this is probably where it ended. I mean, on Google Maps, Google Earth, this is where it ended. So we're gonna spend about 45 minutes surveying this area, just trying to find anything on the ground. And then we're gonna spend some more time going down from here. But as you look around here, there are all these ledges. There are all these ledges where the Mogollon people could have made offerings to try to appease the spirit of the water to flow again. It's just a matter of finding one piece of evidence. We did a survey for surface findings without digging or anything like that, and didn't come up with anything, which is disappointing, but it's not super surprising. I mean, finding archaeological evidence in general is basically almost impossible. And given the fragile geology of the Mogollon world, every time this place floods, or if there's earthquakes or anything like that, these fragile rocks just chip and fall and cover all the ancient debris. So you would need to do a real thorough archaeological investigation at this site. And unfortunately, the Mogollon world is just so overlooked, so underfunded. I think they only have 3 official archaeologists working with this culture. So this site, which I'm still 99.9% certain is an ancient site, I think, if I know anything about Native Americans, it seems like an offering site for water, possibly during times of drought. But as of right now, there's just not the archaeological interest, not the funding, not even the archaeologists in general to excavate or work on a site like this. So whatever archaeological evidence is in here, and I know that there is, it may just sit here for eternity. I don't think that this place will ever be investigated to be able to find the offerings that I'm almost certain must have been put here at one point in time during a very dire time of the Mogollon realm. So there's another site down at the bottom of the West Fork near the Mogollon cliff dwellings, and it's called TJ Ruin. And the TJ Ruin is a hilltop set of houses, kind of like a little town that was connected to the Mogollon cliff dwellings. The TJ Ruin would have been like the center of trade for the Mogollon people, and the Mogollon cliff dwellings, the famous site, would have been for like the royal dynastic family. Well, the Mogollon cliff dwellings have been excavated a long time ago. They were actually looted first. They pulled a bunch of mummies out. Nobody knows the context of which the mummies were actually found. That's kind of a mystery in itself. But TJ Ruin sits there across the West Fork, and it sits completely unexcavated because it's ancestral land. And so the native people of the Mogollon realm, the modern day native people, they don't want that archaeological site to ever be excavated. So Mogollon archaeology just stands still. Nothing is going to happen. Absolutely. There's not going to be any more investigation or archaeology done, as far as what I've learned from talking to people who work in the Gila wilderness. There's not going to be any more archaeological investigation done until the modern native people give approval for TJ Ruin to be excavated. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. So this site, which could add so much more context to the Mogollon world, you know, them migrating miles and miles and miles upriver to leave offerings for water, it adds a whole new dimension to what we understand about the Mogollon. But this will probably sit in silence for thousands and thousands of years and never actually be excavated in the way that it deserves to be. Well, so we're saying goodbye to Canyon Slot 2. I feel pretty convicted about what I think this site is, but without further excavation, we may never know for sure. And that's kind of the sad thing about a lot of these Native American civilizations like the Mogollon that most people have never heard of, is they're overlooked, underfunded, understaffed, and there's the complication there of whether it's morally right or wrong to excavate ancestral lands. But you know, when we're talking about people who lived 1,000 years ago, you know, it is ancient history. So I don't know, I'm torn about these things. Sometimes I feel like it shouldn't matter. We have a right as a people to dig up our ancient past as long as our intention is to respect it. I guess on the other hand, I see that some people may see this as their ancestors, and I get that, but it's also people that lived 800 to 1200 years ago, right? So at a certain point, I feel like we cross the threshold of, okay, well, let's dig up our ancient past so that we understand more about where we came from and not just leave it buried. So, but this has been a great expedition, and we're drawing the survey to an end now. I got to get the guys back to camp. I promised them we'd be back at camp before sunset just for today, and then tomorrow we cross a whole mountain range without access to any water, and the next day we have to get up a mesa, cross the mesa for about 3.6 miles, come down, and then exit the Gila wilderness. So it's going to be a long push. If we can't do it in 2 days, it'll be 3. But I told the guys I'm going to try to pull a Shackleton and get us out in 2 days. So now begins the journey back to camp. Now, the only thing I did find up there that I thought really looked ancient was potentially some red rock art painting. Now, sometimes it can be natural out here, and you can find these red markings in the rock like this right here. See if I can get out of the way of the shadow here. Sometimes you find the red in the rock like this. But what I found up there was up on a cliffside, and it looked more like an arrow with some kind of spiral next to it. I'll put it up on the screen. And I'm not sure if something like that occurs naturally, if it's the way that the vein looks, or if it's just the scant evidence, the scant remains of ancient rock art. So if that's something that actually is ancient, then I guess we found an archaeological site. But I'm still 99.99% certain that this was an ancient site of significance to the Mogollon people. I mean, if we found it in 5 or 7 days or however long we've been out here, it's impossible that they didn't find it and then revere it in the same way that we did when we saw it. So it may be an enduring mystery of the Native American world, and that's why I'm so drawn to it, because it is so mysterious and so unknown and so hard to find. Just finding archaeological evidence is such a feat in itself. I mean, people who go arrowhead hunting in streams, they go walking for hours and hours and hours and days and years and hardly find anything. So much of the ancient world gets buried. My guess is that the vast majority of the evidence that was up there is buried beneath thousands of years of rubble that's fallen off of the fragile geology. But I still don't really have any doubt that this definitely was an archaeological site of significance. But for a multitude of factors, I don't think it will ever actually receive the excavation and investigation and study that it really truly deserves, because I think it had a great significance to the Mogollon world. I have a strong feeling about that. So on the way back, we decided to come up Canyon Slot 1 after all, just because I can't resist the temptation of seeing what lies beyond. So I gotta at least come see what this canyon that I found on Google Earth actually looks like, and if there's anything significant in it or not. Hard part is, I don't think I can do that climb going down, because there's some ice on it. So we're gonna have to find a different way off the mountain, and then I'm gonna have to go back to that waterfall to get my gun and my machete. Right now we're following game trails, which seem to go in this ravine I found. I don't think we could be any more remote if we tried. We are literally in the middle of nowhere. Every time a plane flies over us, that has to be the closest person to us, other than that couple we met and their donkeys. So let's go see what's just beyond the way. Up right in front of us, right up there, is what I saw on Google Earth months ago. The geology is right for cliff dwellings, and it's massive. But
it's not easily reachable. We may be the first people in modern history to actually climb up back here. I didn't think we were gonna be able to get up here. And at the last second, on the last survey day, we just said, forget it, and we'll climb up it and see. It might be nothing, but in the spirit of exploration, we're gonna be one of the only people in history, at least in the last 1,000 years, that have seen what we're about to see. I told you you'd know it when you saw it. The orientation is perfect towards the southeast. Oh man, look at that. Wow. So this is the kind of geological formation that they would find natural caves in, or they would make caverns out of them and then live in them. Well, we made it here.
Dude,
You remember looking at this on Google Earth?
my heart just raced. This is the rock we've been looking for.
Yeah, it's possible beneath all that wreckage right there, there could be dwellings underneath that have been buried over the last 1,000 or more years. Possibly when this place was a little greener, had more water running through it. Well, we came and slayed this dragon. It doesn't look like an ancient site. And it was a little bit too difficult to reach. Don't get me wrong, ancient people liked their difficult to reach places, but it also had to be a little feasible. And it was pretty difficult to get up that waterfall. Just goes on and on. All right, I say we call this one. Well, I don't believe this one was an ancient site, but it's very cool nonetheless. I saw this one on Google Earth. It goes on and on and on and on. But if that first area that we saw with the right geology has nothing apparent there, there's just no point in continuing up this canyon. I mean, that was like the perfect spot. Nonetheless, though, we are probably one of the few people in the last 1,000 years that have ever seen this, if anyone else ever has. I guessed the geology and the orientation exactly right from satellite image. And man, if only that had actually been an ancient site, would have been quite a discovery. The orientation is exactly right. The geology is there. The Mogollon just didn't use it. But I have a much
broader and greater appreciation for these ancient people than I think I ever did before, and then I know that most people do. This is a fierce, fierce environment. I mean, it's possibly even more deadly to navigate and survive in than just out in the desert in some other Southwest cultures. So dense, such fragile geology, rock falls everywhere. You have to pick your home very, very carefully, otherwise it's going to be obliterated by a rock slide. Whew. All right, let's get out of here and head back to camp. All in all, this was a very successful expedition. Ugh. I didn't find an ancient city right there where I was originally hoping to find one, but we did find a pit house village, which was unexpected and amazing. We found a rock wall, we found a rock art wall, and then we found what I suspect to be an offering cache that the Mogollon would have used during times of drought. But ground survey didn't show anything. Of course, we can only spare daylight in the winter, so we don't have so much time out there. It really needs a traditional archaeological investigation, setting up a camp nearby, staying for at least a couple weeks on end to be able to find something. You know, in the Maya world, it's easy to find artifacts because Maya civilization goes on for at least 4,000 years. But the Mogollon in this area lived for just a blip in time of the southwestern culture. So understanding their world and finding artifacts that piece together their world can be very, very difficult. Ow. We are way, way out here. Now, we just have to find a way off of this damn mountain, because I think one of us is gonna die if we try to go back down that waterfall. So down there is where that waterfall came from, but it's too steep and icy to go back down. So we're going to attempt to find another way off this steep mountain. But I'm dubious as to whether or not we will find a way down. Right now, I am seriously just a cowboy walking in the desert on the side of a mountain with no water and no way to get down. And to get down, I have to go up. Oh man. But the views are incredible. I'm gonna miss being literally in the middle of nowhere. Oh man, this sucks. These are the worst mountains to climb down. I'm coming! So down there is that waterfall we were at. Can't go down the waterfall, gonna have to go down the rock fall. I guess this video will continue if I survive climbing down this. As some of you know, I have a very reasonable fear of heights, and sitting up here trying to scale my way down these sliding rocks is the bane of my existence. So, but it's definitely safer than going down that icy waterfall. So let's hope this works. Snakes, grizzly bears, heights. 3 things I'm the most scared of in my life. But that wasn't too bad, I suppose. Probably safer than going up this. You can see that little ice at the top. I climbed over that but I don't think I would be able to climb down it. For those of you who don't do much rock climbing or bouldering, coming down is always more dangerous than going up. Oh, man. But we slayed that dragon. We probably just went somewhere that no human has been since the Mogollon were here. It's that remote, it's that inaccessible. There were no signs of people being back there. No footprints, no trash, no nothing. It was just like, even though it was a complete wreckage from the wildfires and flooding, it was just pristine wilderness. There was nothing back there. And in the essence of being an explorer, that was pretty cool. All right. Well, at least for this expedition, that is goodbye to the West Fork Gila River. Feels surreal. I spent months prepping for this expedition, looking at the river on satellite image. Now we're out here. We explored 3 canyon slots that probably nobody has been in 1,000 years since the Mogollon were here, before they left the Gila wilderness. And we saw a lot that I think no one else has ever seen before. So now it's time for the long journey back to camp, and then to get the guys out of here. Everybody thinks it's gonna be 3 days at least, but I think we're gonna pull a Shackleton and get the guys out in 2. Gonna take them over the mountain, back down the other mountain without water, but we're gonna be out of here, and we got a 6.5 hour drive back to Albuquerque. I'm gonna have the guys back in Albuquerque, take everyone to Brazilian steakhouse. I don't usually spend much money on food, but tell you what, Brazilian steakhouse is gonna be pretty nice after this. So, to the sides of these rivers is where all the is where all these thorns grow out to try to catch the sunlight, and it gets really, really dense. This has been the hardest part of the whole expedition. It's getting through all this. And you know, I was skeptical about bringing the hiking poles with me at first. I was talking to my buddy Joe Rogan about it. He was like, man, you absolutely need trekking poles. They give you 4-wheel drive when you got these heavy packs on. And also, the trekking poles kept me from falling in the river with all my equipment. And they sort of use as a good shield against all these thorns, except my arms are completely torn up. But hey, it wouldn't be an expedition, would it?
No, I'm just gonna laugh.
No, it's fine. You can laugh. So the book that I brought is Cowboys, Mountain Men, and Grizzly Bears, written by Matthew P. Mayo. The story is Enormous Jaws. The preface is... All right, lock the fuck in, dude. Lock the fuck in.
Enormous.
That's the book of the Sager family, dude. That's the story.
That's a great send-off. That's a great send-off for the last part of the expedition.
Yeah, it is, man.
Dude, isn't that wild how
how brutal so much of the Wild West was. Brutal.
Yeah.
All right, so second half of today, we're gonna have to go up and down a mountain. So I figure it's easy, probably better on us to not try to go up the mountain the first half of today, and then tomorrow we gotta go up and down a mesa with no water. So instead, we have an equally bad option that we're calling Schitt's Creek, which looks like rubble of a war zone from World War II. Bunch of scorched trees and rubble laying all over the place. So we gotta go uphill for a couple miles here until we get to this nice serene campsite where we can take a break for a little bit. And most of the day is uphill. So we're all basically just zombie marching it out of here now. Gonna try to make it in 2 days instead of the 3 days it took to get in.
With a downward side motion. And it,
All right, so we walked about halfway across this mountaintop. I'm trying to get the guys to our second to last camp without having to go through all these ravines. And if I go a while without seeing a scorched tree or scorched earth, I won't be complaining. I think we probably would have saved about a day of travel time, of walking time, if we weren't constantly stepping over just absolutely obliterated scorched earth everywhere. This place looks like a bomb went off, like we're walking through the battlefields of the ruins of Peleliu, after, you know, in the Pacific in World War II. I mean, it's that devastated. The wildlife is completely gone. There's nothing. We haven't seen one fauna, one megafauna, no nothing. Not a deer, not an elk, nothing here. It's just completely desolate. So the side mission of looking for big cat evidence, at least in the portion of the Gila that we're in, no. They're probably somewhere further south where the forest is more healthy. But for now, we're making really good time. It's about 2:30. I think I can have the guys over the rest of this mountain in the next couple hours. All right, well, I got the guys all the way across that mountain range. Beautiful view. And now we got to do the most potentially dangerous part of the day, and that's descend down this mountain into this canyon right in front of me. All right, so right in front of us is the mesa that we're going to be climbing up and crossing tomorrow. It's about 3 miles long, and then Snow Lake, where we're parked at, is on the other side. We can get out of here and get back to Albuquerque. We just crossed an entire mountain range today, and tomorrow we got to climb up this mesa, cross all the way, so you can see far off in the distance where those white kind of plains are, and where we're at is right there in front of that. So gonna get the guys up super early tomorrow before sunrise. So I'm gonna get the guys up super early tomorrow, maybe an hour or so before sunrise, still in that blue hour. Get the camp packed up, and then it's gonna take us a little bit to climb up the side of that mesa, but if we can get it, it should be a mostly straight shot. We gotta find a drainage to take us down into Gila Creek, and then from there, I don't know, maybe it's just another half hour or so back. Now, this isn't the route that we took to get here. We had to pass through a bunch of river valleys to do those surveys where we found that pit house village, which I'm really excited about. And we found that petroglyph rock art wall, which was super cool, but most of it was eroded away. The only thing we actually could see or make out was that stick figure with something next to him. And then we found what I think to be a ritualistic offering site. maybe during times of drought in the Mogollon world. But it's been a successful expedition, and as anyone who's been on expeditions knows or likes to read books about great explorers, the exfil, or getting back home, is always the hardest and most dramatic part. And so my goal here is to get these guys out instead of the 3.5-ish days it took for us to penetrate into the wilderness, to get the guys out in about a day and a half. So if I can do that, that'll be a big win for this expedition. Well, we made it back to the Ashlands camp in Cooper Canyon, or whatever this place is called. Looks like an absolute hellhole, just completely covered in ash and destroyed debris. But we came all the way down from the top of that mountain, and then tomorrow I'm waking the guys up before sunrise, and we're going up this mountain all the way over the top again, although this one is only half the distance. Back down the other side through a couple of river valleys, and then my hope is to have the guys back to the truck in time that it makes reasonable sense to go back to Albuquerque. But it was a very successful expedition. It really was. All right, well, this is the morning that we attempt to make it all the way to the original campground. We got to go over this entire mesa this morning, get over the top of it, find a drainage to take us down into Gila Creek, go over another hill, walk across this plain, and make it there. The goal is to do that in about 6 hours, and we can drive back to Albuquerque before the sun starts going down again. So we're up earlier than usual this morning, try to make a successful exfil. Let's get it.
On the way out?
Yeah.
Just one.
It's not bad. It's a nice puff for the way out.
Well, we made it up the mountain. Hopefully that was the hardest part of the day. And something we keep all asking each other is, there's this questionable gas station in a patcheria just north of the wilderness area. If we can get out of here today, we've all been asking each other, what's the first thing you're gonna get when we get to that gas station? Brady's thinking about a Reese's peanut butter cup. I've been thinking about a Coke Zero and some Jack Link's beef jerky. I think that sounds really good. Some sweet beef jerky. But the goal is we got to get this whole thing done by at least 4 p.m. to have at least 2.5 hours of daylight just to drive out of here. But it's a 5.5 hour drive out completely. But the hardest part is the initial drive across Loco Mountain. So even if we can do this in the 8 hours that we've allotted, still gonna take 2.5 more hours just to really get out. But we're making really good time hustling out of this thing. It's gonna be amazing if what took 3 days to get in is only gonna take us a day and a half to get out. Like crossing these mountains for 2 days with no water. But it wouldn't be an expedition then, would it?
I don't need a lot of them. I'm okay with that.
All right, so we crossed halfway across the mesa. Now here's this drainage that's going to take us pretty close to our original campsite. We just have to determine if the bed of the mesa or if the bed of the drainage looks like hell, like Schitt's Creek or something else that we've been through. And if it is, then we want to stay alongside the mountain until we get down to the end. But we're halfway across the mesa and probably at least 30 or 40% back to camp. Looking through the monocular, this riverbed doesn't look like an absolute war zone like some of the stuff we've been through. It's still a little messed up, but I think we can walk this drainage all the way down to Gila Creek. And then from there, we have to determine whether or not we want to go over the next hilltop or if we want to follow the river all the way to Snow Lake or follow the creek all the way to Snow Lake. But it's gonna be a little bit of going through this bullshit and then we'll be there. Doing good?
Doing great.
All right, so the only predator that we've seen other than the gray wolf when we first come in, or evidence of a predator, is right here as I'm going over this log. Look at that right there. 4 little claw marks. Looks to me like a little bear cub trying to get over this log here. That's pretty cool. Who knows how old that is? That could be years old though. Well, there are definitely predatory animals out here, but I don't think it's very often. So we made it across the mesa. We're now here at Gila Creek. Looks like maybe because it's warming up and that snow is melting, this river's running faster and it's a bit higher than it was when we first came through here. So this next probably hour or so, I think we're gonna be getting wet. Absolutely perfect day. The forest and God, and by God I mean the forest, and by forest I mean God, blessed us with a perfect day to escape the wilderness. So we just actually saw for the first time fresh bear tracks. Where we're at now is much less damaged by the forest fire, much more lush for wildlife. And there's definitely a bear somewhere in this area. Big black bear. So it'd be cool to see him, but I wouldn't want to run into him under the wrong circumstances. Well, the expedition is almost to an end. We originally planned to be out here about maybe 2 or 3 days longer, but we had some food shortages and the path to penetrating into the uncharted portion of the West Fork was just too treacherous. I think the likelihood of someone breaking something or spraining something was really, really high. So I just led the guys over 2 mountains in 2 days with no access to water. And rather than 3 full days to penetrate into the most uncharted region of the Gila, it took us 1.5 days to get out. And I think of anything of this expedition, of the petroglyph site that we found, the pit house village, and what I think to be an offering cache site, I think the most satisfying thing is being able to get everybody out without any serious injuries. I mean, we're all scraped up and bruises and cuts, but no serious injuries. And I'm glad to be able to get the guys out of there without having to spend any more nights there than we absolutely needed to. For anybody who's into expedition history, you know that the escaping the expedition is usually the most memorable and dramatic. And that certainly was for this expedition too. So we're not completely out of the woods, literally. We got to drive the truck out of Loco Mountain Pass, which is probably the most treacherous road I've ever driven on. And then tomorrow we go to the New Mexico Archaeology Museum to check out some of the Mogollon artifacts. And here in a couple days, that'll be the end of the expedition. Expedition 1 was a success, all things considered. And a lot like that gray wolf that we saw coming in, that wasn't the rare predatory animal that we expected to see, but it was a rare predatory animal nonetheless. And I think that kind of encapsulates the expedition. I hope my grandpa is proud if he can see this somewhere. He probably never would have thought his grandson would come back and explore the Gila again some 60 years later.
So in the last few days of the expedition, we visited Albuquerque, some of the museums there, and looked over the ancient artifacts that were on display, and I sort of organized some of the data from the findings. Two of the main findings actually being somewhat accidental. I mean, they were along the route that we were surveying, but I had no preconceived idea or notion that we would find these sites exactly where they were, as I did with some of the sites that were further into the wilderness area, up in those slot canyons. The first being that huge pink rock art wall where we found a surviving stick figure and something in the sky along the rock wall next to him that was sort of protected by an overhang. It was the only bit of the rock wall that hadn't completely eroded and disappeared over the last 1,000 or more years. And then I believe the next day is when we found that set of pit houses, or that pit house village. Now we really need to go back to that site and do a ground survey, as if we can find anything like pottery shards or stone tools or any sort of spear point or arrowheads, well, you can use those styles to somewhat accurately date the archaeological site. And pit houses go anywhere from 200 AD all the way back to 6000 BC. It's a huge area, but you can actually get a much more accurate and precise date if you're able to find specific types of arrowheads and pottery shards, etc. And then after that, when we finally got up into those slot canyons we were looking at, Slot Canyon 1 turned out to be nothing. The geology was there, it was correct, it had the right orientation, the geology was right for creating artificial caves, cliff dwellings, but the Mogollon, as far as I could tell, just didn't use that slot canyon. Slot Canyon number 2 was the one that was the most promising, where it just absolutely looked so evocative when we were up there. And if I know anything about the Native American world, it just seemed like things that I had seen in Central America, Mexico, where the Maya are going to these places where they know that the sources of water come from during the times of drought, and leaving offerings, leaving pots with kill holes in them. It's essentially you leave a pot and then you strike a hole into the pot that essentially releases the spiritual essence of the pot itself. Well, the Mogollon are doing exactly the same thing. We know that the Mogollon are influenced by Mexico and Central America because we see in their iconography that they are performing the same sort of executions and beheadings. There's tons of evidence for the Mogollon being influenced by the Mesoamerican world. There's even evidence that the Mogollon may be the northern end of the Mesoamerican world. So if I know anything about Native Americans, Mesoamericans in particular, and the Mogollon are influenced by Mesoamericans, it leaves me being 99.99% certain that Canyon Slot 2 is an archaeological site. But in the limited amount of hours that we had there due to time, daylight, food constraints, I mean, we woke up in the morning, and I'm not sure if you can tell from the footage put together, but it's a 2.5 hour journey from leaving camp there. You only have a few hours left of daylight, maybe 4 hours or so in a day, because you need 2.5 hours just to get back to camp before sunset. So in the limited amount of time that we had out there to survey, we weren't able to find any surface findings, but I am personally positive that it's an archaeological site. But one ancient artifact would take me from 99.99% certain to 100% certain. And then Canyon Slot 3, if it ever was anything, it's been completely obliterated in the last millennia or so. As far as findings of animals, the wildfires that have occurred in the Gila wilderness over the last decade or so have absolutely decimated the forest. I mean, from the time that we penetrated into the narrow canyons where the fire was just devastating, there was nothing. There were no animals. I mean, we saw we saw what must have been mountain lion scat. We saw some bear scat, but the only two animals that we ever saw the whole time that we were actually inside those valleys, not in the rolling plains around the mountainous region of the Gila wilderness, were two ravens that would swoop over our tents and caw at us in the mornings. And that was it. So my hope to find the presence of a lone male jaguar, let alone a hidden population of breeding jaguars, they were not along the West Fork Gila River or north of that in the area that we covered. They were probably somewhere further south, maybe where the fire hadn't damaged the wilderness area so gravely. So next on the agenda is to return to the Gila wilderness and just do a ground survey, looking around for artifacts that are on the ground. I am not an archaeologist. I don't carry out archaeological excavations on site. If there's pottery laying on the ground or there's arrowheads laying at the top of a stream and you can see them, you can date the site and you know how old the archaeological site is. I gather that data, give it over to the few hands of archaeologists that look over the Mogollon world, and maybe one day something will come from that. But that's my role in this as an anthropological explorer. If I find ancient artifacts, I don't take them with me. They stay right there in the Gila wilderness among the ruins of the people who created them. I want to thank my friends over at Cool for helping equip me for this expedition. Cool pants, cool shirts, everything that Cool makes is absolutely fantastic. And lastly, most importantly, absolutely none of this expedition would have been possible without my expedition crew that was there with me. So I want to thank Alan Reyes, my camera guy, my good friends Nick, Darby, and Brady. Without you guys, the expedition would not have been possible. And I had an absolutely fantastic time out there in the forest. As they say, the wilderness can be hell, and in this case, it really did look like hell. But, you know, one kind of likes it. I'm Luke Caverns. Thank you for joining me, and please like and subscribe for more expeditions in the very near future.
Well, if the wife and I's a fussin', brother, that's alright. 'Cause me and Ed and Juan, we bought a license to fight. So don't you mind your own business. Yeah, mind your own business. 'Cause if you minded your business, then you wouldn't be minding mine. Oh, the woman on our party line's a nosy thing. She picks up my receiver when she knows it's my ring. Why don't she mind her own business?